All right, we're live now. Hello, everyone. Ellie from Matherspolitico here today with a very special guest, Hadi Saab, who is running for the Karrarook ward in the city of Kingston. How are you today, Hadi?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's okay. You know what? First question, we're going to get straight into it. Who is the people in the Karrarook ward who are looking to vote someone fresh and new? Who is the Hadi Saab that they're going to get to know and love?
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, I should start with like why I decided to run. I feel. I mean, I never really
start with that. Yeah. Why did you decide to run?
I mean, I never really envisioned wanting to get into politics. That was never my plan. I mean, like I studied software engineering. I work as a technical consultant. I love my job currently. I'm learning a lot from it. But when I was in university, I've been volunteering like nearly all my life all of my adult life, I should say, since I was 18. I was part of my youth committee. I got involved in clubs and societies at uni, my religious group and stuff like that. And so I've always been involved in committees and helping out the community. I mean, you're a beta boy as well.
Fellow beta boy.
So all of that Lasallian culture, I was part of Lasallian leaders, so I volunteered in a lot of homes and things like that. So I've always done stuff for the community. So, my last couple of years of uni, I was lucky enough, I got tapped on the shoulder. I got asked if I wanted to sort of get involved with my student union. And I thought it was a good opportunity. I thought it'd be something I could like learn. I always had somewhat of a passion for it. I was lucky enough to get elected as the People of Colour officer for Monash Student Association, Monash University in Clayton. And that was an amazing experience. I learned so much. I found a passion for actually helping people and advocating for issues, and trying to create a better environment for, at the time, obviously students, and specifically people of colour students. And then I wanted to do some more, and it was my last year of uni. So I was able to run again, and I got elected as the executive representative, so on the exec committee. So that was more of a broad role, overseeing like the actual organization and making decisions financially and working with the staff as well. And that kind of like lit a passion in me that I found like this is something that I really enjoy and something I feel that I'm actually really good at, because if you're good at something and you're passionate about something, then you kind of want to continue it. So I really didn't know when I got out of university at what capacity I kind of wanted to do that in. So, I started attending a couple of the council meetings. I reached out to a couple of my local councillors just to see, what does they do, what I can do, without any intention for anything really. And then when I went to a couple of council meetings, I saw some stuff. I got kind of frustrated, not at the lack of work, but at the way it operated, and the fact that there was so much more that you can really do. And so at a distance, I was observing it for a while, and then COVID hit. A lot of people, obviously, not in great situations, and the people that were worst off hit were the ones who are already not in a great financial situation and already feeling the burn from other stuff. And I saw that there was actually stuff that council could do to better support those people. And so that's why I kind of decided to run. I felt like that was something, I'm passionate about. I want to help, and I think I would do a great job. I listen to a lot of people. I like talking to people. And I just sort of want to give back to the community, I guess. I'm not really sure where I'm going to take this after that, but that's why I'm doing that.
Well, you're talking about helping the community and you have that burning passion to help people. Do you have a certain example where that passion was born during your life? Where did you learn to help others?
That is a good question. I say I'm like I'm like my mum, where I have a very soft heart. So someone comes and I like feel a lot of empathy for people immediately when I see something that's wrong or something that they're going through, and I kind of immediately have that sense of I want to be able to help. Is there anything I can do? And obviously that started at a small scale, like you do it with your friends and things. But then as you get older and there's more opportunities present itself, you kind of like expand that out into other areas. So I mean, when I was working at Big W in Southland, I was working customer service, and we'd always have customers come in who, you know, wanted help with their phones, or they wanted some extra stuff. I oftentimes, you know, I'd sell a TV, for example, and they'd have no idea how to even install it. Like, they don't know how to install any of that stuff. And I actually a couple of times would go after work hours to go help those people out and install it. So I've done that a few times. Like, you just, I don't think there's a specific way where I can say like it grew from somewhere. I felt like I've always wanted to try to help, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. I've done a bit of background research into your family, and you said they've opened a pizza shop in East Brighton and operated for 20 years, and used to go after school and just help out and just hammer it out, get things done.
Yeah.
Do you think that helping out others and helping out your family was really why you get that sense of passion? Do you think that could be it?
It could be. It's a very it was a family business, man, through and through. We as soon as my brother could walk, he was like in the shop, you know, like toddling around and stuff like that. But you know, I would say so. It's also like, yeah, it's I guess it's kind of like, I don't want to say it's a cultural thing, because it's not necessarily, but you know, at home we've just got a culture of helping people. So I guess it's really my parents that kind of instilled that into me.
Yeah. That's a beautiful thing. Beautiful thing. I know you don't really, like, you can talk about it if you want to, but you've got a very inspiring story that a lot of people probably don't need to hear and should hear. It's about like a power of working hard and achieving your dreams, no matter what your circumstances are. Could you elaborate, or, you know, talk about how your family, your father, your mum, how they came together and came to Australia?
Yeah, I will say before I go into it, I wrote that and I showed my parents and I said, are you guys okay with me putting this? And they were like, no, why do you want to, why is that necessary? But look, yeah, so my dad, you know, my dad grew up in Lebanon. He was born there. He worked as a banker for a time, and then the Civil War hit. And so he sort of had to flee the country. He left to Australia. He met my mum as well when he went back. My mum had just graduated and she had started working as a teacher in Syria. And she was down in Lebanon, you know, visiting her family and stuff. And then they came down here. Neither of them really, I mean, Dad spoke a bit of English, but mum didn't have any English classes, you know, didn't speak any English at all. And so they moved down here. They bought the pizza shop in Brighton, like you mentioned. We've had that since, I think, over 20 years. We've had it for so long. You know, and we lived actually behind the pizza shop as well. So it was like, it was part of our, you know, literally part of the family. So, you know, we would walk home from school. My school was like right around the corner. So I'd walk home from school, you know, go help out in the shop. We were lucky enough, you know, the shop did well. We were lucky enough to open up another pizza shop business in another part of town in Dandenong. And we worked there as well. So it was sort of alternating between, you know, working one day here, one day there, wherever we could. So it was from that where we kind of like learned the idea of like, I didn't really know any different, to be honest. I thought that's just what everyone else was doing. You know, you work hard, you help your family business. That's what it is. And I thought that was like, you know, what everyone did. And I found, you know, it's just part of it, I guess, you know.
It's like installed into you. It's installed into your DNA.
You could say that, yeah.
That's a pretty inspiring story. No matter who you are or where you come from, that's like, you can always look at that and say, look, the odds may be stacked against me, but I can always rise above it and achieve what I want to achieve. And here we are today. You're running for the local council in the Carrawalk Ward in the city of Kingston, and anything's possible. That comes from the hard work and determination from your parents, and of course yourself and the rest of your family. So hats off to you there, Hadi.
Thanks,
So
man.
we're gonna dive into the policies now. So I feel like that will be a bit interesting one. You're divided into 4 key policy areas. So you got your green initiatives, you got your family and community, and you've got your housing and planning, and you've got your infrastructure. We're gonna dissect each one if you're okay with that, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
So basically, the first things first, the green initiatives. We're going to start off with that. You
Sure.
talk about the return and earn scheme. For people who don't know what the return and earn scheme is, could you explain it to them?
Yeah, of course. Okay, so the return and earn scheme actually is currently in a couple of different states in Australia. They've got it in New South Wales and they've got it in other states. The one that I was kind of drawing inspiration from, because I actually saw it in person when I was living in Sydney for a little while with my brother, is this return and earn scheme, which is it's a container deposit dispensary, where you go and bring your plastic bottles or glass bottles, and you go in, put them into this dispensary collector, and you actually get rewarded back for recycling correctly. And I mean, the premise of it really is it's kind of like touching base back with how we used to do recycling before we did mix recycling, which is why I think it's really important, is that idea of separate recycling, because it's the best way to not contaminate and, and actually recycle properly, because you understand what you're doing. So what it is really more specifically is the Victorian government kind of earlier this year actually approved to bring a return and earn or something similar to the return and earn in New South Wales to Victoria. They said they drew a lot of inspiration, or they were watching and observing from New South Wales and other states and how they were doing it, and to figure out what kind of system that they would see here. And so they don't actually have a specific rollout strategy. They don't really have any idea of where they're putting those things in. So my premise was to consult with the community and actually figure out, where can we see these things, and what does it actually kind of look like? And then on behalf of the residents of Kingston was to work with the state government and actually seeing those and implement them throughout Kingston in key areas, throughout. Anyway, I've had a lot of suggestions of where people think they could go. But I think it requires like a proper report and investigation of to where.
Of course. Because it will be a positive thing for the environment. Of course, the community gives a monetary incentive for people to recycle and earn from it. So it's pretty much a win-win. And if you can bring that into the city of Kingston straight away, I think that'll be a very positive thing for the community.
Yeah, I mean, it touches. Yeah. Oh, sorry, go on.
Oh no, you.
I was just going to say. I was going to say it actually it sort of touches on a lot of like key issues that Australia in general is facing when it comes to waste and recycling. We've got a big problem with not having any recycling infrastructure, and that's another thing we can probably talk about after this particular one. But even beyond that, we have a problem with waste contamination. I mean, I actually did a quiz earlier today on my Instagram, just seeing, just trying to gauge where residents were at and what their thoughts are when it came to recycling. And more specifically, like things like, do you put recycling in plastic bags and put that in the waste? Do you recycle the whole coffee cup, like the takeaway coffee cups, or is it just the lid? Stuff like that. Like it seems we need like a better rollout of an educational plan so people can be aware of. And I know a lot of stuff in that area is happening with Sustainability Victoria. And they're even introducing like, the purple bins now, like the glass bins and the paper bins. So I think we realize that is a key issue. And so we kind of need to see stuff that kind of touches back to how we used to do recycling. Mixed recycling is really important going forward.
Does that lead into your next green initiative, which is the introducing recycling and waste education plans? That's probably the interlocks between each other.
Exactly. I think it's really important because it's no one's fault, because recycling is really confusing. It's hard in Australia and Victoria. Like every borders treat recycling differently. Packaging comes from all over Australia. So it's hard to figure it out. And it makes sense. Even I sometimes don't really know what to do. And I'm not saying like I should know everything, because it's hard, but it's really difficult. I mean, one thing that we do at home as well is we do this when in doubt, throw it out campaign, which I think is a really good campaign. Have you heard of the when in doubt, throw it out?
I haven't heard of it, but I did see on your Instagram story you mentioned it. So that's where I've heard it from.
It's just like I saw it somewhere. I can't remember where I've seen it, and I researched it since, and it's obviously a pretty common campaign. But we do it at home anyway. Like my brother will just, he'll pick up something and be like, "Oh, is this recycling or not?" I go, "I don't know. Just don't risk it. Throw it out." If we can't Google it and find the answer quickly. So like I think it's important because of waste contamination. I even spoke to the City of Kingston. They've mentioned that like in certain suburbs in Kingston, it's a pretty big problem.
Where did you have an experience with like trying to simplify recycling? Where was the tipping point for you where you're like, damn, this needs to be one of my key policies that needs to be addressed?
Yeah. So I lived in Sydney for about 2-3 months. I lived with my brother and his wife, my sister-in-law, when I was like working in Sydney for a bit. I was like doing an internship, and they had just transitioned into being, vegan and trying to transition to a lifestyle of like zero waste, recycling, all that sort of stuff. And living with them over that period of time, like, was super, super eye-opening. And then when I came back home, just noticing like how we threw out so much stuff out here, and we just didn't have the same processes. Like, that they did it to the extent where they lived in an apartment, so they didn't have like they didn't have any compost or anything like that. But what they would do is they would just, like we've got these caddies now in Kingston, they would just have a little bin next to their sink where they would just hold all of their food waste. And then at the end of the week, they'd go and drive and drop it off in someone's compost bin. There's like some app that does it. She would clean my sister-in-law would clean all of the bottles out and properly recycle and stuff I didn't even realize that we needed to do. And then noticing that they threw out like almost nothing. Like they were really, really good at being practical with packaging and stuff as well. Like, they went to stores where you pour your own oil and you pour your own nuts into like a little thing, or like you bring your own Tupperwares, which the downside is it's the worst thing to bring to a shopping center. Like, you're carrying bags full and they're already heavy, and then you've got to like carry them back and they're even heavier. But that was very eye-opening.
That's a crazy experience, but a good experience, because imagine if someone or yourself, if you do and get into the council, imagine you could like transfer that knowledge and make it into something like positive for community, and people like just understand the importance of recycling. It's not, I think, unfortunately, as humans in general, we tend to look for the easy way out, no matter how way we want to look at it. If we don't want to admit it, we always look for shortcuts. And I think recycling, unfortunately, cops it a bit from that, just in human nature. And if you could appeal to people by talking about your experiences, like with your brother and your sister-in-law, and how they were so efficient and so like passionate about it, but smart about it, then maybe that could be a huge, huge thing for the community in terms of, decluttering everything, recycling.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, on that as well, like there's this thing that I've kind of been reading up on as well. It's called like aspirational recycling. And you sort of touched on it with like people just inherently are a little bit, want the easy way out. But I also think it's also not just that they want the easy way out. It's like aspirational recycling. Like they want to do good. People want to do good naturally. Like you don't have the intentions of doing bad, but we just don't know enough, which is why I think education plans are really good. So something that touches on that is really necessary.
In terms of your education plans, going back onto that, do you have a specific education plan that you would roll out to the local community?
I think it would actually be less of something that Kingston would come up with themselves. I think it's more engaging with people who are doing it and doing it really well, like Sustainability Victoria and those type of groups, and just get them involved into whatever it is we do out. It's more so that Kingston, as a city, as a council, has the platform to actually facilitate that, to like roll that out to the residents, because it's people like us who need to be aware of this thing rather than it just being a campaign that goes to dead end. And I think a big one as well is making sure that it touches base with people from all ethnicities and all the different all the different cultures that we've got in Kingston as well. Yeah.
So that's summing up pretty much the green initiatives. We're gonna, for all the audience and whoever's watching, basically Hadi Saab's green initiatives are return and earn scheme, introducing recycling and waste education plans, as we just discussed, making it more efficient, people getting educated, knowing what to do, because like you said, we're inherently good. We want to do the good thing and right for the community. Also, just basically, all in all, simplifying recycling. And so those are your green initiative policies. Very strong policies indeed, and I feel like that would be a very good thing for the community if you do happen to get elected.
Thank you. Hopefully.
And hopefully the rest of the city of Kingston can see those policies and hopefully act on it. We'll go into your second set of policies now, which are family and community. We already know where your sense of community and your sense of helping people comes from. That comes from your family, comes from what you were brought into the world, what you grew up with, what is installed in your DNA. So no doubt about it, you want to help people. And one of the key policies is for increasing pensioner support and introducing a rebate on a waste charge. Now that's a lot of big words if you're not into politics and like economic side, and if you don't pay attention. Could you simplify what that means?
Yeah, of course. So essentially, all it really means is we kind of want to give back more to our pensioners. So pensioners already receive a rebate on their council rate charges from council, and they receive a rebate from the state government on certain charges that they get and certain bills and stuff like that. The problem with that is, especially now, actually this is really relevant now, for the first time in 25 years, the pension wage has actually been frozen. And while the cost of living generally rises by 2%, the pension wage hasn't obviously risen to counteract that. So people already, and I think there was a study done, and I can't recall it right now, I'm sorry, but people are coming out of retirement, like pensioners are coming out of retirement to part-time jobs just to live comfortably. And so the idea stems from, there's already a budget line in Kingston Council's budget where they account for the rebates that they give to residents. And so the idea would just be to expand that budget line, expand what they can actually give back to residents, and make sure that includes the rebate. That's what it means, a rebate on their waste charges. So they can earn a little bit more and they can just live a little bit more comfortably. And it's something that wouldn't actually affect other ratepayers. We're just expanding an already existing budget line. So that's the idea of it.
Where does the passion for that one, similar to your green initiatives, did you have a certain experience to why you want to choose increasing pensioner support?
I think generally, I feel a lot for being a person who's sort of come from a little bit more of a low socioeconomic background. I understand that there's a lot of issues, and it's really difficult sometimes to get the same opportunities and the same advantages as other people who are a little bit more fortunate than we are. And I know pensioners obviously are retired, but we kind of need to respect what they've gone through and the struggle that they've gone through, and allow them to live their lives, more comfortably, as they've already given, their lives to their families or to the community and stuff. We sort of need to give back as well. It kind of just stems from being, equitable and being fair.
And that comes from your DNA with what you were brought up with.
I guess.
It always comes back to that. And that just, the next policy is just rate rebates for struggling families. So is that much of the same lines as the increasing the pension support?
I want to see if this is a possibility in Kingston. I don't know if it's something that can actually be done, but these family and students who are already receiving help from Services Australia, generally they're not the ones that want to stay on these things. They're trying to make a difference. They're studying so they can get a job. They're raising a family that they have to take work off, and they're needing the support that they can get. And I think we just need to support people in difficult circumstances, and especially now, like in the situation that we're in. And I don't want to make this a COVID thing, but just in general, like we should be trying to support people where we can more than what we currently are doing.
Yeah, and that comes back to your sense of community. You've got to help everyone. Everyone needs a helping hand during these unstable times, unfortunately, with COVID, that no one saw that was coming. So if the council can do the little 1%ers on a small stage, that will help out in the long run. So that is a very powerful policy indeed, if the council can put that forward. And your last sort of policy one in the family and community section of your policies, revitalize the globe to globe celebrate in multi festival. Explain the globe to globe. If they've come across it, if never come across it before, what is the globe to globe festival? It is more of a northern Kingston sort of thing, in like the Clarinda, Clayton area. People know a lot about it. It's really popular, or it was really popular. It was just this festival where they would do it in Namatjira Park. It was huge at the time. For a couple of years, it was amazing. They bring, obviously music, rides.
it used to be about, learning about different cultures, and they used to have shows where different community groups from, different groupings would just come and do a show. They do a dance, they do something that's a little bit more culturally, more in line with their culture. Yeah. And just lately, like it's almost nothing. I think last year they had a single tent. Like that's all they really had. It's a real shame, because it was something that a lot of people look forward to each year, and it actually gave the opportunity for community groups to grow and supporting them in celebrating their own culture. So the idea behind that is, I think we really need to bring it back to being about the community, engaging with community groups. We've got amazing community groups that are all registered and they do amazing things. We just want to give them the platform and the ability to do, even more. And Globe to Globe, it would just be a shame if that was to die, because that was an amazing event. I know a lot of people from, I'm going to say my generation, but I'm still young. A lot of people from my generation, the people just older than me as well, loved it. So I want to make sure that we kind of still see that happening again.
You speak very passionately on the Globe to Globe. Do you have any specific memories or like events that happened during that year, like you look fondly on and you want people to know what it's all about?
That's a very good question. I can just remember one time with a school friend came over, and then we went to Globe, and we just ran into so many people that you just don't expect. The only thing I can remember is my phone dying and not being able to contact my family and panicking and yeah. But that was, it's a good time.
Yeah, it's a very good initiative. A very good policy. Like we need those like festivals and Globe to Globe events in the community to make people come together and look at where people come from, what different backgrounds, and just understand each other. Like all humans want to get along, and as long as we understand each other and what roads we took to get to where we are in the city of Kingston, I think that's a very positive step in the right direction for bringing the community together, and people will be happy. So Globe to Globe, I don't think you can go wrong with that, especially if there's good food there and good bloody culture thingamajigs, like it's who wouldn't want to like deny that? It's like those, when you go to, for example, it's probably not the same level as Noodle Night Market, but when you go to Noodle Night Market when it was on,
it could be, it could honestly be just as big as Noodle
just
Night
a bit.
Market. We just need to build it back up again.
If you've been to that, obviously, if anyone's been to the Noodle Night Market, why don't we make the Globe to Globe like just the thing that brings everyone into Kingston, and that just makes everyone like learn about each other, which is, who wouldn't want that at the end of the day? So yeah, I'm kind of passionate about the Globe to Globe one. I really like, that's a very good policy.
Maybe if I'm elected, I should hit you up and we can organize it together.
Go. So that pretty much sums up your family and community section of policies. Do you have any policies that I missed from that section, or is that pretty much all summed up?
Well, I mean, there was one that sort of evolved from not to do with community and family, more so to do with the green initiatives, because we've kind of gone over it. I know I'm bringing it back a little bit. That was kind of evolved from talking to a lot of people and doing a little bit more research. I know a lot of countries and cities around the world are kind of like scrambling to build infrastructure to actually have proper recycling. The issue with that obviously is we as a city like Kingston on its own doesn't actually contribute enough recycling for it to be profitable, for it to even be able to actually operate feasibly. And we don't have a location in Kakaruk that isn't invasive of other issues and doesn't cross other, like the issues of the green wedge. There's no other place that you can put it, and that green wedge isn't something that we can sort of change. We need those open spaces. We need that green wedge. It's like the beating heart of Kingston, the lungs, if I can say that. But what I would love to see, and they've already started working towards it, and I think it's a really good idea, and I kind of want to, if I'm lucky enough to be elected, it's probably going to be something that I really want to put my efforts into as well, is for something like a recycling station to be feasible, because we don't really have that infrastructure, is you need to work collaboratively across different municipalities. You need to work with different cities, not just Kingston. We need to work with all the different council areas. and that's something Kingston's already started doing. And the idea would be to actually create, it would be able to leverage proper infrastructure and buildings and make it profitable, where we could all generate, where we would be able to generate enough recyclable waste for it to be feasible and proper. And then where it gets built is obviously somewhere that makes sense, where a council actually vies for wanting it. And to be honest, Kingston has actually already started making leeway in that. You know, they've already engaged over 30 different councils, and it's still the very, very early stages of it. But it's important to bring up because it's going to be happening in the next council term. So, you know, we really need to see someone who wants that to happen and actually is something that they want to push for and drive in council to see that actually happen, something that's like a proper recycling infrastructure, because we do really, really need that in Victoria and in Australia. So it's less of a policy point, because the work is kind of already started, but it just means that like you can't build a recycling station in Kingston. And I've kind of seen people mention that they want to see a recycling station, but it's not. It doesn't make sense, and it just won't be feasible to operate. So that's like one, less of a policy, more of a stance, I think. Yeah.
Is that one of your biggest worries, that if you like the council won't talk about that if you happen not to get elected?
That and another issue, I think, and the other issue was brought to me by residents, to be honest. I don't know if you've read up on the chain of parks, the Sandbelt open space. Have you heard of that?
A previous person we interviewed last week, Jack, I read up on it a little bit. I don't understand the controversy behind it, so you know, the floor is yours. Explain.
Yeah. Well, I truthfully, I only knew about it briefly, but some residents have pointed it out to me that have been working really hard on it. And it kind of inspired me to work hard. And I spoke to some councillors who've been fighting for it as well. And that kind of like also inspired me to think that this is really important. It's a really important issue. So the Sandbelt open space was a project that was promised by state government to build this big open space sort of land and parks and stuff like that. And where it's important for Kingston is there's a part of it which is called the Chain of Parks project, which council has approved the plans for, which is supposed to be connecting 3 really big major parks. And those parks just happen to be right in the heart of Karkarook ward, in the ward that I'm running in. And what it was is they used to be all landfills and tip sites. So we used to have heaps of landfills and tip sites all around Kingston, especially in the area that I'm in. And they've just spent the last like 10 to 15 years closing them down. And they've finally managed to close and cap and remediate all of that land where it's now ready to be used. And the reason this is also super, super prominent now is the 2 main sites that I'm mentioning is the Delta site and the Henry Street site. Those lands have also just been capped and remediated. And the idea is to build a park there that would connect to Karkarook Park, which also actually used to be a landfill and dumping ground for materials and bricks and waste and stuff. And 1970s, I think it was the 1970s, yeah. The council realised that, especially with all the residential buildings popping up, there was a need to have an open space park, and so they transformed that whole area. And that's where the word Karkarook comes from, because it used to be a sandy pit, and Karkarook means sandy pit. They drained that whole area from the sand and transformed it into like a genuinely beautiful, beautiful park that everyone loves. And we need to see that continue to happen. And they've been fighting for it and promised a chain of parks since the 1970s. And now that we're at the stage where we can start to see like the progress happening and that land transformed into parks, again, like that's another thing I'm worried about, is if we don't elect people who are wanting to drive and passionate about that, we're going to miss that opportunity. And there's been discussions of that state government are looking at that space for other reasons, to build other stuff and like other developments on that area. And we just can't have that. I mean, people have been fighting for it for so long, and the land is ready to finally have these parks. So we just sort of can't give up on doing that.
Very interesting. What do you get out of going to your local park, for example? What experience do you have, and why do you think the community should be open to having more parks?
Yeah, well, I mean, now more than ever, it's pretty clear. Like a lot of people, especially with the restrictions that we've got now, everyone is heading towards parks. You know, we're walking there. It creates like it sort of instills in people to be healthy and fit and active, and they go together. It builds communities, community bonding. Like you go to a park, you have a picnic with different families, with your own family, with your friends. It's a meeting point, and you see that in like more towards the city and more densely populated areas that don't have a lot of open spaces and don't have the opportunity to even develop open spaces, is you feel a little bit more isolated, and there's not a lot of opportunities to do things like ride your bike, have a great go and celebrate a birthday with your family in the park. It's things like that, and besides that, it's also really good for our environment to have open spaces. Less densely populated buildings. I mean, we need affordable living, so responsible affordable living, but you don't want to build high rises and inappropriate, open up another landfill or a recycling station in your backyard that's going to stink up the whole residency. So,
and I think that comes to your next section of policies, is in your housing and planning, is that you want to protect the backyard, as you would put it. You want to protect from large developments, particularly over 3 stories. Would you like to elaborate on that? Oh, you've already elaborated on it pretty convincingly. Do you have like a certain experience, or do you have some residents have come forward that have
recently? Actually, So council passed this plan recently, which was like the new zoning strategy. That was a really big thing. That was really important for a lot of people. It was rezoning, obviously, just to see where like what was possible in what areas and things like that, what developments you could have. And in part of that sort of housing rezoning strategy, it sort of came about from a couple of issues that residents had, where a plot of land, like a big plot of land right next door to them, was being zoned for a massive 3-story complex that would have overshadowed the whole street. Created really dark patches. It's just not good for the whole street or for the people who live right next door to it. The flip side of that, though, is that's where protect your backyard is, because it was literally people's backyards that are being invaded by these developments that aren't necessary. The flip side of that, though, is you need responsible, affordable housing. Like people do need affordable housing, but it's just where that is important, and that's where the zoning strategy sort of comes in.
Because it needs to be sensible. You understand the point that people need to live somewhere, and it's good to have that. But if you're in your backyard and you've got high rises towering above you, no one really wants to live like that, do they?
You don't want people looking down at your.
You need your privacy. You want to be in your own space. If you want to sunbake, you can sunbake. But you can't do that if you have a massive high rise.
Yeah.
We'll go into your next key policy in the section of housing and planning, and that is securing parking. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah.
Make it easier for people to.
Well, this is probably hits home for a lot of people who live on the Nepean Highway or major roads, or even now anywhere around Southland, anyone in Cheltenham, anywhere around Southland. With all the parking rules and infringements. It started actually from when I had first decided to going to council meetings and stuff. We had neighbours not neighbours, but people who lived not too far off from us. They came over and they told us about the issues they were having when they were living on the Nepean Highway with all the rules and all the fines they were copying from people who would essentially be stealing their spots because it was free parking, just down the road. And they didn't want to pay for parking in where their work was and stuff like that. So the idea is of revisiting these parking areas and these parking sites and making sure that it's actually fair. And it puts the people who live on those streets first. They get priority, and that's what it should be like. So that's all. That's where that sort of comes from.
Have residents come forward and spoken about it to you, or is that just specifically from council meetings that you've attended?
No, predominantly it was from people we know who live down Nepean Highway. That sort of they came and spoke to us about issues they were having, and then even myself from working, and I'm kind of guilty of it, I have to admit. But when I was working in Southland for a little bit, and they started doing the pay parking, I didn't want to pay for parking. I'm a staff. I'm there every day. I didn't have to pay to work. So I would park in the side streets and I'd walk really far, but I didn't want to pay for it. And then I didn't at the time think of like what that would mean for other residents who are living there. And I kind of understand now that it's not right. Like it's not fair.
Yeah. It would be very annoying if your entire street. I know specifically where we're living in Bomb Beach. When we're on Broadway and it's just full of units, full of like just units, and there's just tons of cars parked on the street. And not only that, it's annoying, but it's really like it's a safety hazard because you can't really look out when you're trying to pull out the driveway because you got cars like blocking your view. So you sort of have to like wing it. The other day, actually, almost did get in a crash, but that didn't happen, luckily. But it's just, like, who wouldn't want clear definitely touch wood. Yeah. Who wouldn't want clear parking? Who want like sensible parking? I think everyone has an experience with disastrous parking. Like parking, it's one of those like kind of first world problems that we all have like a disdain for. We don't really like. In some instances we love it, some instances we hate it. But that's a strong policy as well that probably does need to get talking about a lot more in the community. So we'll go into, and that probably leads into your next policy, which is a bike lane on Bernard Street. Just elaborate on why a bike lane on Bernard Street? What's the philosophy behind that?
Yeah. So Bernard Street is a really, really busy street, especially during peak hours of like school pickup and drop off times. It's because the Cheltenham Secondary College is just on that road, and off through parallel or perpendicular roads is another primary school and another primary school and a kinder and a community centre and stuff like that. So it's a very busy street. It also connects two main roads really. It connects Warrigal Road and Nepean Highway. Like you can sort of just like drive straight through to sort of skip all of that. So it gets a lot of traffic. And so the problem with that is as well is Cheltenham Secondary is a really big school. And we have a pretty big bike culture there as well. A lot of people like to ride their bikes to school. When I was younger, I remember when Dad was dropping me off at school, so like a long time ago. We nearly saw a kid get hit on his bike as well. He sort of just pulled out in between cars to cross the road. He was trying to make the light and stuff, and a car had just taken off. So it's a safety thing, really. Like we've got a lot of schools there. Bike lanes are necessary. The problem is Bernard Street is also it's got a couple of issues with it where there's also a traffic issue and then there's also a safety issue. And you kind of need to consider both if we're going to do something like that. And Kingston in general anyway has approved this, I think it's called the integrated travel plan, which is the idea of how they can integrate, amongst other things, a bike network, a network of bike lanes. And so it just makes sense for a road where it is kind of dangerous for school kids, and there is other schools nearby, to introduce a bike lane that will, if implemented correctly, will control the flow of traffic a little bit better. It will make sure our kids come and go from school safely, and it's part of like the way forward. It's also environmentally the way forward. We should be encouraging people using their bikes if they want to.
Exactly.
So it makes sense, I think. There is obviously concerns. It's a bit of a controversial one because some people think that there's other issues that need to be addressed, but it's currently actually in discussion with what is the way forward in terms of addressing the safety. If it's reducing the speed limit on that road permanently to 50 kilometers, or introducing speed humps. But I think the proposal of a bike lane is probably is a better alternative to those two that's currently being put forward by Kingston Council.
One of the concerns, so I know that street well, Bernard Street, where Chelsec is on, and of course it's I'm pretty sure it's part of the course for Vic Roads as well when you do your L's and your driving tests. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, okay.
I could be wrong.
No, it probably is. That makes sense. No, that makes sense. Yeah.
The only concern I would have with it, and maybe a few residents would that increase the traffic, and would I'm might cop a bit of hate for this. I do get a bit annoyed when there are cyclists on like Nepean Highway that don't have a designated bike lane, and like you're trying to drive past them, but you're like everyone else is going 80. Do you think that type of, if there was a bike lane, do you think cyclists would, not necessarily the kids, but the grown-ups who are cycling through that area, do you think they will respect the bike lane? And do you think there would be more traffic?
Yeah, so good points, because that is why it's a little bit of a controversial one. But in terms of people using it, and like adults using it and not just children, the reason they do that is because there is no bike lane. Like the reason they are on those roads is because there is no dedicated bike lane, and a dedicated bike lane would actually mean there isn't that congestion of where you're traveling so slow behind a bike and you can't overtake or do whatever. A dedicated bike lane, actually, that's where, if implemented correctly, can actually improve traffic flow. The issue of congestion is it already exists right now, and I think I don't think a bike lane will add to the congestion that is occurring there. I mean, it could, and that's why you probably need a proper report and a proper investigation to figure that out, of what the recommendations are by professionals who work, and do this for a living. They would know more of what our options are. But there already is a congestion problem, and I think we need to figure out another way of addressing that congestion problem. And I don't think we can say that not introducing a bike lane for the safety of school children, as well as for the safety of other people who use bikes, is a reason to sort of deter wanting to implement one.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I was probably a tad bit biased. I do get a bit annoyed on the.
No, I get it.
but like you say, it would increase the traffic flow. And it gives people incentive, and we do need to look at greener alternatives to using cars, specifically for the future, and getting kids active. And it gives them an easier way to get home, necessarily if their parents can't pick them up. So that would be, it's controversial, but if implemented correctly, like you're talking about, I think it would be very beneficial for the surrounding community. So that'll lead into our infrastructure one now. So that's your last and final policy section is on infrastructure, and you talk about lighting up the neighborhood. Talk about that. Elaborate.
Okay. So I don't know if you do this, but I used to go on late night walks all the time. Like, I really enjoy going on late night walks. I think it's a good. I don't meditate. I can't say that I do. I wish I did, but it's a good way to like kind of reflect and sort of just think, and you're on your own thoughts and stuff like that. Or if I need to take a call, I like going for a walk at night because it's a little bit more peaceful and quiet. But I know, for example, my mum and my cousins who live nearby, they won't walk at night. They don't feel safe walking at night. And that's an issue that not just them, but like nearly the whole of Australia feels, There was a study done in 2017 where, and it was a university, it was targeted at university students as well, where they felt unsafe walking, from the campus to their car because there just wasn't enough lighting on campus. Like, if people feel that they are seen and feel safe in their community, we should be encouraging that. The caveat with lighting up our neighborhood is it needs to be done properly. You can't have like bright white lights, people get annoyed. You don't want to put it in you don't want to put it like outside my bedroom window. I'm not happy with that. But we need to make sure that it makes sense. And then also that it's smart street lighting, that it's solar panel powered. So,
and it's not draining up all the energy and increasing the
That's it.
Energy flow into it. And of course, like you say, it falls on the execution of it as well. You ensure that it will be executed properly, because you don't want those big, footy stadium lights, lighting up. Even though
could you imagine?
It won't happen, but if you could imagine, that is not a smart, lighting up
No.
a neighborhood.
Yeah.
That will never happen, but
Hopefully
you just got to
not, no.
execute. You got to execute it properly, and not a lot of I do see with looking at all the fellow people that you're running against in the Carrick ward and people
There's a
running
lot
in
of
different wards itself. They don't really fall upon lining up the neighborhood, but I haven't come across that policy before.
I think the alternative one that I have seen actually is the idea of more CCTV footage, which I think is a little bit invasive, to be honest. I don't think we need more CCTV footage, everywhere. A more affordable, reasonable alternative would be to light up our neighborhood where we can, like our open spaces and our parks.
Yeah, that goes into probably a state level or federal, issue. Then if we increasing CCTV, the ethical issue as well.
No.
And then we'll go back onto your next one. You've spoken about before, the green wedge. Just give a quick rundown to any of the audience or the viewers that will potentially watch this video of what is the green wedge.
The green wedge is a zone in Kingston, in the entirety of Kingston, that has been zoned as the green wedge, to be used as like open spaces, not to be used for like landfills or development sites or anything like that. And that came about. That's been in the works for a really, really long time, and the zoning of that has been in the works for a really, really long time. And there's been a lot of people, like residents, community groups. I can't recall the name of them now. The name of the community groups, but there's a few community groups in Kingston who came up from it, and some councillors have been fighting for it for a while, and I kind of just want to see that continue, that work continue. It may need to be revisited in terms of like where it is and how that fits into Kingston's wider plan, but I think we need to protect our green wedge, and not have. Sorry.
And it leads into the connecting the park project that we were discussing before. Green wedge is very crucial in that. Who doesn't want to protect nature reserves and parks from like development and overdevelopment? So I think it's a very common policy that we've been seeing along with your fellow people that you're running against, but it's a very strong one that is good that a lot of people are talking about it. So good on you, Hadi, for that one.
Thanks.
The next one is I haven't seen this one as well. This is a new sort of policy put forward. It's probably specific to your ward. It's upgrading the supporting facilities. Specifically, you mentioned the public tennis court at, correct me if I'm wrong, pronunciation will be really bad, but Namatjira Park.
Yeah.
So I haven't been to Namatjira Park, but explain what's the problem there with the tennis court?
It's not just, and you know what, I have especially spent this past week talking to residents about parks and things in the area, and some of them don't necessarily fall in Kakaruk, but I think like the work of a councillor, obviously once they're elected, obviously they're there to represent their ward, but that work can expand into neighbouring wards that the residents of your wards use. Namatjira Park is a really popular park in Clarinda, but it's in Bunjil, just north of where this ward, sort of the boundary of this ward. But obviously all the people in this ward would use it. Similarly, like everyone in Bunjil would come and use Kakaruk. So it's kind of important to like realize what we've got and how we can upgrade them. Kakaruk ward, Namatjira Park specifically, it has this public tennis court which is always used. I always see people in there, and kind of from my own frustration as well, it's kind of run down. It's a concrete court, only the one. It's always busy. Sometimes you wait like hours for someone to finish before you can jump on the court and play. The net is really like unstrung. It needs to be looked at. The ground is kind of uneven in parts and cracked. I think that is due for an upgrade. I mean, it's well and good to go and build massive, large developments and stuff as well, but we kind of need to look at what infrastructure we've got and make sure that we kind of keep them up to date as well. But as I was saying, I was talking to residents recently about parks that they would like to see change, or things that they'd like to see in parks nearby, and a big one that was pushed by a lot of adults, people love parks, was the idea of an adult like playground, like those gym centers, like those fitness centers that you see sporadically throughout a running track or something in a park, and one being implemented in Kingston Heath Reserve, like that would be a really good place for one. So I kind of spent the better part of this week, it was really last weekend actually, but also the start of this week, visiting nearby parks that may have been in the ward, some were just outside of the ward, that they're coming a little bit like old and they're just not exciting, and like the space is there and we just kind of need to make sure we revisit them and make them popular again.
And of course you'll make sure the execution's right, because there's a few developments going on. I think it's a state level development on Bay Road. There's going to be a netball facility being built in where Sandy College is, and they have that big wide open area. It's like a parkland. They're going to build a netball facility on there. If it comes to that, if you do get elected and you have to come across upgrading sport facilities, will you execute it properly so that surrounding residents won't get affected by it?
I think that's important. I think Kingston does a pretty decent job about this, and I think they probably need to do a better job about this. But community consultation is important. Who knows better than the people who live it? So we kind of need to drive that. I mean, I know I was speaking to small businesses about issues that they were facing and stuff like that, and permits that they saw and what their thoughts were. And oftentimes in some of the decisions in where their shops are, they weren't really consulted on, So I think we need to do a better job of consulting with the community. So you're right. Yeah. And that is part of the execution. Like that's the process part, not the ideas part. And I think that's really, really important.
Well, we've reached the end of your policy section.
Oh, wow.
So how do you feel? Is there any policies, like I said before, did I miss any policies in the different sections, or?
No, those are the ones that I had thought of, and the ones that I spoke to. Yeah, they're just ones that I spoke to about with people before I had sort of announced, and when I had first announced. But to be honest, in the past couple of months, just speaking to people, getting phone calls, even actually speaking to other candidates in this ward who are actually even running against me, and some in other wards, and listening to their thoughts and their ideas. There's a lot of great ideas out there. So there's a few things that have kind of evolved from that I can't take credit for, but I think they're amazing things. And I think if I'm lucky enough to be elected, I think it would be really good to see most of those things happen.
Yeah. So I'll reiterate everything for all the audience and the viewers. And of course, correct me if I've missed a few points. So basically, your policies are divided into green initiatives, family and community, housing and planning, and infrastructure. Basically, this is all on your Hadi Saab City for Karawuk Ward on City of Kingston on your website. You've got your own Facebook page as well. So if you're interested in looking furthermore into policies and who Hadi is, please visit those sites. So basically, green initiatives, bring back return to earn scheme, introduce recycling and waste education plans, and bringing a council that basically recognises climate change. We discussed that. You've got family and community. That's your next section of policies. You've got increased pensioner support, rate rebates for struggling families, and revitalise the Globe to Globe Festival. We love the Globe. And then your next section is housing and planning. Basically, protect your backyard from overdevelopment. Specifically, we don't want those overreaching apartments over 3 stories behind your backyard, and of course, other developments that are stupid for the community. You've got your, clear and secure parking. Basically, Southland, we discussed what happened there and how, unfortunately, you did use some side streets when you were working at Southland, but it's an issue that does need to be addressed. And of course, we spoke about the bike lane on Bernard Street. Of course, that's in your housing and planning. I did have a note jot down, and it's about your COVID recovery. Would you like to explain your COVID recovery policies, or is that just all entwined?
No, I can't. I think no. Kingston does need a really specific COVID recovery plan for local businesses and for community members, residents. The COVID recovery plan that I'm suggesting is there's a lot to it. I think first and foremost, Kingston needs to have the capacity to actually support internally a way of communicating and advising local businesses on changing regulations so they can stay up to date to the rapidly changing regulations so they can stay compliant. Thank you. We need to create a grant for small businesses to actually come back online so they're able to open up their stores and they can actually start serving again. And that's expand the grants that we've got to include a small businesses grant to do that. We need to be able to subsidize the stores who have actually had to purchase a lot of PPE equipment and a lot of safety equipment to stay operational and to continue being operational, at least for the foreseeable future, until we can get back to a normal that's a little bit more, workable. Yeah, that makes more sense. And another one as well is we need to work with community groups that already exist. There's groups that already do a good job of this, and Kingston needs to engage with them in promoting to residents to start shopping a lot more local and supporting local businesses. That's a big part of it. Another part of it as well is it's on the tip of my tongue and I've just forgotten it. But the idea is it's multifaceted, and it can't be just a simple approach. Like, while something will happen at a state and federal level, it's really necessary that we do something at the local level to help our small businesses more specifically to continue operating and be functioning. Because for a lot of people, I mean, like if we still had our pizza shop, that's like our livelihood. Like if without the shop, we wouldn't be able to operate. And similarly, it'd be the same with a lot of these families. Like they put their heart and soul into this sort of stuff. Usually, it's something they're really passionate about, and if they've been closed for so long, it's really difficult. That's why I think another part of the plan, I've just remembered it, is a rates relief package, but for the period of time that stores weren't actually able to be open. Because it just makes sense that they wouldn't have to be paying their fares for something they weren't even able to control. And that's at a local business level. And we need to do some other stuff in the areas of like mental health and resilience for the rest of the community.
And I think that's a very good COVID recovery plan. We need to speak about it. It's good that candidates are bringing this up. It's a crazy time, 2020 for sure. We're speaking out about this before we came on the live stream. No one expected this to happen. And as long as you've put forward a cohesive and coherent plan like you've just spoken about, then I think we will be okay. And 2021 will be a better year for everyone.
I hope so.
I like that plan. I like it. But small business minded. That's what makes the community go around. Seriously. And so, yeah, and we'll finish on, I know we got sidetracked on the COVID point. I just realized it was on my notes. We should have spoken about it.
No, thanks for reminding me. It is a big, really important issue, and I totally forgot about it, but thank you.
That's okay. Well, at least we spoke about it now. It's out in the open. People can, listen to it and, respond to how they like to. And basically, the last section was infrastructure, and Hadi's points for that was lighting up neighborhood, of course, suitable and efficient and, just smart lighting. The green wedge, which is basically just protecting reserves, parks, et cetera, from development and unnecessary development. And of course, upgrading sporting facilities, specifically looking after the public tennis court at Namatjura Park, which is not necessarily in your ward, but a lot of people from your ward use it. And that's vice versa with, what was the park called again that's in your ward?
Kakaruk Park.
Kakaruk Park. So, vice versa. And I think that's a very good thing to touch on is we love a bit of newer sporting facilities. It will get people out and about and bring the community together. So that's it for the policy area. I'll ask you a quick fun question. Yeah. I ask all my, people that come on to the podcast is, it might be a bit out there. You might not be expecting it.
Yeah.
What do you think of artificial intelligence And do you think we should be worrying about it in the future?
We have a long ways to go before we have to worry about artificial intelligence too much right now. I think I told you I do. I'm a software engineer, so I studied it a little bit. Artificial intelligence is kind of stupid at the moment, if you're using it in a practical sense. So we're good, but yeah, definitely be worried. Everyone should be really, really afraid of it eventually, but not now.
Are you worried about that some military guys going to get hold of? Because there's 3 levels of it. There's general, and then you've got it's not general. It goes I can't remember the 3 levels, but it basically goes simple, what we have now, and you got your general, which is like the same conscious and smart level as a human thinking, and then you've got super level, which is basically every 5 seconds they get like 5 Nobel prizes or something like that. They can work it instantaneously. Are you worried that like some military dude's going to take advantage of that and just rule the world? And
they might even be, now that I'm thinking about this, they might be at a stage right now where it's something to be worried about. Maybe not think about it. Otherwise I'll be too worried. But I think that's a tough question. I am now worried because you've made me think about it. And I'm telling people not to be. So
that was a bit about that question, but I love it. I love your answer to it. And I kind of just want people to get more involved in it. And you already know about it. You're a software engineer. You know all that jazz. You know what's it about. So
yeah.
Hats off to you. Keep fighting. Was there anything you'd like to talk about? We've got one question from a comment. It's Joe King, and he says, very specifically, are you Labor?
Hello, Joe. I'm Labor leaning. I've told you I vote generally Labor when it comes to election time. It's more because I'm more progressively minded. A lot of my policies are progressively minded. I will say though, I'm doing this like 100% entirely independently. My campaign was completely self-funded by my family and me, so not entirely self-funded. But I'm not running as a candidate for like any political party or anything like that. So I just did it because I wanted to get involved with the community and thought I could make some serious changes.
That was a great answer to that question. That was a very thorough question there. Went straight to the point. Actually, just went bam straight. But anything else you would like to add? Would like to talk about? Nothing left on the no cards.
Maybe I'll shout out. Can I do a quick shout out?
Of course you can.
I put together a petition to go to state government. So if I have in any way made you passionate about building a chain of parks, or you want more open spaces in Kingston, please go sign the petition. I will probably post about it tomorrow, but I've already posted about it on my private and on my page. Go sign the petition. I'm hoping to get it tabled before the end of the year to make sure that the state government commits to purchasing that land and using it for an open space and not for anything else other than what it was, what it was committed to for and what people fought for 40 years. So please sign the petition.
Bam, you heard the man. If you're interested and you're passionate about it, sign the petition now. So I think that's it for today. So Ellie from Matherspolitico signing out, and with our special guest, Hadi Saab, running for the Karrook ward in the city of Kingston. His 4 key policy areas go as follows: green initiatives, which has your return and earn scheme, introducing recycling and waste, education plans. You've got your next section, which is family and community, which involves increasing pensioner support, including rebates and also rate rebates for struggling families, and also revitalising the Globe to Globe Festival in Kingston. Also, your third section is housing and planning, protecting your backyard from overdevelopment, securing and clear parking, also a bike lane on Bernard Street, highly controversial, but if you're passionate about it, please go ahead and look into that one and Hardy's policy and stance on that. Of course, under that section as well is the COVID recovery that we've just discussed. Also, you have your infrastructure, which is basically lining up your neighborhood, building, looking after your green wedge, your nature reserves, your parks, etc., and upgrading sporting facilities and upgrading parks in general, specifically the tennis court at Nomadura Park, which is not necessarily in your ward, but people in your ward use it. So that is today, Hadi Saab for running for the Carrick Ward, City of Kingston. That is the Hadi Saab that you're getting to know. And hopefully, if you enjoy his policies, if you enjoy him as a person, go out and vote for him. So thank you, Hadi, for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.